So I always like to say that I grew up in a very Huckleberry Finn kind of way. Very normal. We lived in a neighborhood. We had creek beds behind us and woods, and I had a lot of boys in my neighborhood. I would play with frogs, and I loved tadpoles, and we would go out in the morning and then come back before it was too dark. I remember playing Barbies with my friend and she had the older brothers, and they were listening to, like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin. I just remember, like, very normal, what I would consider a fairly normal childhood. I have an older sister who's my business partner, and then I have a little brother that came along 8 years behind, and so he was kind of raised like an only child. But it was my sister and I for the first, I would say the first chunk of my life. We had a family company, what Hable Construction what we named ourselves after. And so, it's funny when I start thinking about this, I go straight to playing with this monkey on my Aunt Susu's kitchen floor that flipped. You wound it up and it clapped the cymbals and flipped, and like a cloud of smoke above me because everybody smoked back then, and they had a very long house and a white brick fireplace. It was very modern with only the gas lit, and a white piano, and white and long, and anyway, it's so strange. And they had a very long hall, and we would bowl. These, plastic, we would bowl in this hall. But, I have to say, my father's family lived nearby, and my little town was, and still is, a sweet place. People who think about Texans, I've been asked a million times, did I have cows in my yard? No, I didn't have cows in my yard. I didn't ride horses as a child. My mom was a big horsewoman, but that wasn't how I was raised. And Catherine, my sister, who's always said that anything that I did as a child, my parents she would get in trouble for, but because I was the creative one, she said, if you hung naked upside down off a flagpole, they would just be like, oh, she's just so creative, and she would be grounded for the whole summer for the same thing. And so I didn't really see it that same way, but when I think back, I was my art or my personality, and my mother could see that I could do something. My grandfather, who was a crazy archivist, I guess I could say, he created a book of my work from when I was tiny. And I still have this book where I would send the artwork to him, and he would grade it. So I'd get like A+++++, and so we had this little back and forth through the mail, and so they knew that I've always drawn. It didn't just happen, it's just always been just the way that I have been. It's just how, you always wonder how that manifests. And I can still remember, I don't really have a lot of distinct memories from my childhood, but I do have memories of art projects where I felt that I could have done better, or times, it was all related to art in some way. And, at school, and if somebody did something that I thought was better than mine, and that also, when I'm telling you this, it makes me think that how self-critical I am. I think that's just something that I always dealt with, is the inner voice. You know, I'm also a big thinker. I'm always trying to better myself. And if something is scary, I've always told myself that it's good for me in some way. You know, I have to really look at it. And yeah, putting your art out there is scary, but you know, the more I do it, the more comfortable I am with it. The cool thing was, in my little town, there were 2 women who were very, very talented artists. One is a watercolor specialist, and the other was a color specialist. She did oil paintings. And so I remember in the 5th grade, her having private lessons for me. And the ladies, they would have, at least in one of the studios, I would go and help after school. And I'd sit for she'd have classes, portrait classes, and I'd sit and I'd, you know, clean up the studio, and just, I was around them. And to have these 2 different personalities in town that were open to mentoring me or helping me, I mean, you know, oh, it's a small little town, but there are jewels in every little place. So I love that my mom, you know, really encouraged that and would pay for lessons for me, and just fostered my creativity that way. My mom has been pressing flowers for a very long time. The Strawberry Vine series came from these tiny vines that are wild strawberry vines that are grown in New Mexico. They had a home there for the summers, and so they are different than the wild strawberry vines that grow here or in Texas. And it wasn't until she started winding these vines and pressing them, and I found them in her. She has drawers of different types of specimens, and she does things with them because she's creative. She makes cards and does collage with them. But it wasn't until I saw those and then actually had her send those to me, and I, in turn, created this art from them, but blew it up really large. So I do, you know, it's funny how that little thing became these big, more abstract pieces, because that's how I saw them. I wanted my imagination to blow them up and simplify the shapes.